Hello and welcome to this training on managing mental health and well-being, particularly for people in the legal profession. So, what was happening before our current situation? I mean, obviously this training has been created specifically to deal with us in the situation of lockdown, but where were we at before COVID-19 arrived? So I've been working in the health and well-being space for lawyers for a few years now. And one of the reasons I really got interested in that was that I came across a statistic from some Law Society research that said 95% of lawyers who they'd studied reported suffering from moderate to severe work-related stress. And that was a study of around 8,500 lawyers. So I think it was a really good size study. The US has found that 18 to 20% of lawyers are using drugs compared to 8 to 10% of the general population. And the average lawyer works around 60 to 80 hours a week, with people who work over 50 hours a week being highly likely to be using alcohol as a stress reliever. So those were the issues pre what we're dealing with now, pre-lockdown, pre all the concerns we've got going in relation to the coronavirus. But what are we facing now on top of those issues? So we're facing the issue of remote working from home, which ironically, many lawyers have been calling for many years. So some of us have been able to work remotely from home for a while, but probably weren't doing it 100% of the time. Whereas I know there were others who very, very rarely were working from home unless they had a delivery or a doctor's appointment or something. But now we're all facing being at home 100% of the time, and obviously in isolation and lockdown as well, which is very different from just the ideal being able to work from home remotely when you want to. So what we're dealing with now is this sense of isolation. So yes, isolation from our friends and family, but in a work sense, we're isolated from our team. If we're a junior person, we're isolated from supervisors and people that we'd normally go to with questions. And as a more senior person, you are isolated from not being with your team every day, not being able to hand out work to them, speak to them directly, see how they're doing in the well-being sense, etc. So we're dealing with that sense of isolation. We're also dealing with the fear and anxiety that comes with this situation naturally. So there are fears about either our own health or those of loved ones. We're anxious about the economy. We're anxious about finances. There's so many things that we have to be worried about at the moment. And then on top of that, I think there's a couple of other issues, completely opposite, and we may go through the whole spectrum in the coming months. But are we too busy? You know, certain areas of the law, whether they might be restructuring, finance, employment lawyers, I know are very busy, as are wills and probate lawyers. So it may be that they've got a lot of work on their plate, but they're also trying to manage that in the home environment, possibly with homeschooling as well. And then on the flip side of that, I'm a commercial property lawyer, and I think I can see the time coming in very short weeks that there's not going to be a great deal of property work going on when we can't have any surveyors going out, we can't have valuers, we can't have NHBC certificates issued, we can't have people going viewing properties or tenants going to see new offices, etc. Construction work has stopped in the main. So some of us are going to be finding that we get quieter and quieter. And ironically, we're never happy either way, are we? And as we get quieter, then that is a concern for people as well about the future of their role, etc. So all of these things are there that we are worried about. And on top of that, as I've already mentioned briefly, we may be managing homeschooling at home, and we may be at home with our other half, which, you know, we may not be usually at home with them all day long, and we're having to manage who's looking after the kids. In my circumstance, who's using the office, and therefore where is the other person working? All these things we've got to juggle. And then on top of that, there are concerns about finances, of course, and interestingly, food. You know, none of us, I don't think, have ever lived in a time where we've had to worry about running out of food. You know, not going out to the supermarket too often, so trying to make everything that we have last as long as possible. And of course, in a couple of weeks gone by, we saw real shortages in the supermarket, which is starting to come around again now, but there is still that concern there about how often should we go out shopping, how much food do we need to get in. So all these concerns are going on whilst we're still trying to work as well. So what I wanted to just talk about today briefly were some of my favourite strategies for reducing stress and looking after our well-being in this remote working environment. So who am I? My name is Hannah Becko. I am a commercial property partner and I qualified around 15 years ago, I think. So I've seen many ups and downs in the market, including the 2008 to 9 crash. I decided about 4 years ago now to start a business called Authentically Speaking. And because I'm self-employed in my legal role, I get a lot of freedom to obviously choose the hours I work. And so I began Authentically Speaking, which is a speaking, training and coaching business predominantly for lawyers, and to help deal with issues like stress, anxiety, improving well-being, improving those professional skills. I know a lot of people would refer to them as soft skills, but I don't like the term personally. But I'm certified as a coach and as a corporate trainer to be able to help lawyers with all of those issues. I'm also the regional lead for an organisation called Women, Lawyers and Mothers, which is a national support group for parents. We do have some male members as well. So parents who are juggling the life at home with the life at work. And it's quite ironic that we're almost in the opposite situation now, where we're trying to juggle work while we're at home. And I'm also mum to 3 boys that you can see there. My eldest is 10, the middle one is 6, and the youngest one is 2.5. So what I wanted to ask you now is if you've ever noticed any of these symptoms which might show that there's a bit of an issue, that your well-being is suffering. And you may, if you haven't noticed some of these already in this lockdown period, we're coming into the time around week 3 to 4, based on some evidence I've seen from Spain and Italy, where you may start to be noticing some of the more stress-related symptoms. So do you notice that you're having trouble sleeping? So that's getting to sleep at night, and also waking up in the middle of the night around 2-3 o'clock in the morning was usually my sort of time. Waking up worrying about what I'd forgotten to do, what I needed to do, procrastinating over something. Do you find that you're struggling with focus and concentration? And I'm sure many of us are in this time at the moment. Do you find that your memory isn't as good as it was? You perhaps think when I was younger, I had a great memory, whereas now I'm really struggling. Do you find that you're eating perhaps too much of the wrong foods, too much comfort food, or not eating enough? When we get too busy and stressed, we often don't eat enough, which of course our body needs, and potentially drinking too much as well. And do you ever notice silly things happening, like perhaps getting a speeding ticket in a 30-mile-an-hour area that's right outside your house and you drive through it every day normally, but one day you get caught doing 34 or 35 because you weren't paying attention, or potentially minor bumps in the car? Reversing into stationary objects was a favourite of mine a few years ago. And for me, these things just showed that I wasn't paying enough attention. I was rushing about trying to get too much done. Now, these things might be less likely at the moment in terms of lockdown, but if you do notice anything that is out of the ordinary for you, then it could be a symptom that you've got some stress increasing there. So here are some tips and tools for you for how to be productive at home. Now, I've seen quite a lot of negative spin, if you like, on productivity in the last few weeks. And as a coach, I do see exactly where they're coming from. So I'm not talking about productivity in the sense of trying to make people get as much done as they possibly can. This for me is about, if we can maximize our productivity, that might be helpful to us because we may have a shorter window to get our work done. If we are homeschooling and or sharing office space with other halves, etc., then we may not have as long in the day to get our work done as we would ordinarily in the office. So using some tips and tools to be more productive can help us get through what we need to, perhaps a bit quicker than we would. So my first step here is to create a workspace that's just for you. So I tell people, ideally don't work on your sofa or in your bedroom. Have a place that is a workspace, even if it's an ironing board. I've seen people get really creative over the last few weeks. It could be, in the hall, or, I've seen under the stairs and things like that. But a place where you say, that's where I go to do my work. And then at the end of the day, or when you're having a break, you come away from that space. I also suggest to people that they have a regular waking up time. So Of course, you may not be getting up for your commute these days, but it's better to have a structure to our day. And it also helps us then distinguish between the weekend and, for example, the holidays. So on a normal weekday, it's good to get up at a regular time. Now, I recommend to people that they do have a shower and get dressed. I know some of my friends who are very successful business people say they work all day in their pajamas. And if they can stay productive like that, then absolutely. But for me personally, I like to get up and get ready. Obviously, I'm not putting on a suit or anything that I'd normally wear to work. You may be doing if you're on Zoom calls and things like that, or you may not. But I do recommend we get up and get ready as if we're going to have a normal working day. Now, I always suggest to people that they spend the first 10 or 15 minutes of the day doing something really positive. So I would recommend people connect with people perhaps in their team. I know some people are having team meetings via Zoom or Teams at about sort of 9:30 in the morning. So maybe spend some time connecting with your team. If you're not connecting with your team at that time, think about doing a bit of business development. Now, business development sounds like a scary thing, but it can be as simple as going on LinkedIn, making a few new connections, seeing what your connections are up to on LinkedIn, maybe reading one of their articles, making a comment, liking a post, something like that. That's all business development. And this is really useful time to be working on our business development, on our contacts, and building relationships with people. Now, another tip I suggest for productivity is to chunk your work into what I've called productive segments. So we tend to work best either at about 45-minute chunks, sometimes an hour, sometimes 90 minutes, and you should test this out to see what works well for you. So the idea is that you choose a task. Now, that may be responding to emails, it may be responding to phone messages, it may be drafting a document, doing some research, whatever it is for you. And say, right, I will spend the next 45 minutes or an hour, whatever works for you, on that task, and then move on to something else. And I also suggest having a quick break in the middle there. Have a drink of water, make a cup of coffee, maybe just stand up and have a stretch and then sit down again. Something that signals to your mind, if you like, that you've moved from one task to another. And I'd always recommend turning off notifications while you're doing that set of tasks. So say, for example, you are, in my case, I might be reviewing a document. Then ideally I would turn off my email notifications while I do that, because otherwise what happens is an email notification comes in, and if you're like me, you might look at it and go, oh, I could just reply yes or no or thank you to that, reply to it quickly. But what's happened is you've switched your attention from the document you were looking at to the email, and you need to switch it back again. And there is some studies to show it can take us 10 to 15 minutes to switch from these different tasks. So just answering that quick email might actually lose you 10 to 15 minutes of time in reviewing the document you were looking at. So I'd always recommend, if you can, turn off notifications while you get one set of tasks done, and then obviously turn them back on if it's an email time for you. Hopefully that makes sense. So some tips and tools here for well-being. Now, obviously at the moment we're being advised we can go out for exercise. So if you can, go out for a walk. If you haven't got time for a walk in between your various tasks in the day, just spend some time looking out the window. The one blessing we have at the moment is that spring is here, the sun is shining, and it is really good, I think, to just take a little break, even just for a few seconds, to look outside the window. Of course, I'm going to recommend you don't watch too much of the news. There is an element of needing to be kept up to date. And I think maybe you can do that just in 10, 15 minutes once a day. We all know that we are now in lockdown. And I suppose in many ways, until they tell us we aren't, there isn't a great deal more that we need to know. So don't spend too much time watching the news. And again, maybe if you have notifications from the BBC or whoever on your phone, turn those off so that they're not disturbing you in the day. Very simple things, but always useful to be reminded of, is drink plenty of water. As I mentioned earlier, make sure you're stopping to eat as well, because all this is fuel for your body and for your brain. So if you want to be as productive as you possibly can and lower your stress levels, then making sure we do the simple things like eating and drinking water is really important. Getting enough sleep is absolutely key. There is some really interesting research that says a lack of sleep can be more detrimental to our health than smoking. So getting enough sleep is really, really key. It affects all of our organs. So can we use this time where we're saving on the commute to maybe get a little bit more sleep. If we weren't getting enough sleep before, can we make sure that we're getting enough sleep now? And what helps with sleep is having a regular going to bed time and a regular waking up time. So I would highly recommend that you do that if you're not already. Now, again, I've heard lots of people talk about how we could use this lockdown time to learn something new, pick up a new skill. And yes, I agree, but not to the extent that it puts any more pressure on anyone. But, you know, it could be that you choose a new podcast or you start listening to one you've liked before. Maybe there's an Audible book, you know, you could put on while you're either going for a walk or just taking a break of 2 or 3 minutes in between different tasks throughout the day. You know, maybe there is something that you could spend some time listening to that you wouldn't ordinarily have the time for. If you're normally someone who goes to the gym, and even if you're not, you know, is your gym offering online classes? I have young children, so, you know, we are doing the Joe Wicks at 9 o'clock most days. So, you know, I think that's been a fantastic resource for all of us. It means we have to get up and get ready and be there for 9 o'clock in the gym class. So, you know, maybe your gym is offering classes that you can join as well, so you're still getting your exercise. Now, tips and tools for staying connected. Now, humans really need connection, and that's why I am particularly worried about this period of lockdown. Now, if you go back to cave people times, we needed to be in groups to survive. If we were not within a group and not protected by them, we would die. And, you know, our brains still work very much on that basis. They need to feel connected to others. So how can we do this? You know, within your families, definitely. We are having a family Zoom meeting on a Sunday night. We do that, and we've had one birthday so far during lockdown, so we had a family Zoom for birthday, which was great. But with your teams, can you have virtual team meetings? You can use Zoom, Teams, Microsoft Teams is free now. So if you're not doing this already, I'd really encourage you to have team meetings. I know some places are doing it every day, some places are doing it a couple of times a week. And of course, you could have the virtual team socials as well. So there's Thursday or Friday night drinks potentially. There's a coffee morning, or there's sitting and having lunch together online. You know, all these things keep people feeling connected to the people that they work with, even if they're not talking about work. You know, I've heard my husband's team talk about, you know, what their dogs are doing or what their children are doing. You know, at the same time, they're doing a sort of client update as well. So, you know, those meetings can definitely be a mix of things. WhatsApp groups, I think, are brilliant. My personal local group at work are on a WhatsApp group. I think there's about 30 of us. So it's nice for people to pop in there. Sometimes people are just posting the funny videos or the photos or whatever. But it's nice to still feel connected to your colleagues through something like WhatsApp. Now, I've put here, make suggestions for improvement. So, you know, if you are having, whether it's virtual team meetings or socials or anything like that, if you see somewhere that this could be improved, you know, if you think, actually, I think it'd be better if we had more of them or less of them or a different time of the day, or if we're having normal team meetings, are we having a coffee or a drink social? You know, make suggestions for improvement to your team if you can see something there that would work for everyone. Now, checking in on your team. Now, you can do this at whatever level you are, but particularly if you're a team leader or more senior, how are you checking in on your team? You know, if you're doing a virtual team meeting, are you really checking in on how people are? Now, there's certain ways that you can do this using wellbeing scoring. So you can ask people on a scale of 1 to 10 how they're feeling that day. Obviously 1, 2 and 3 is going to be really quite worrying, and I don't think anybody is going to be at a 10 potentially. But it's a nice way for you to check in on people and to see how they're doing, because if you do notice someone has a big drop, for example, in their scoring, then it may be someone who you just need to be keeping a bit of an eye on. Because obviously, if you were seeing them most days in the office, you would hope that you would notice if people were struggling a bit with stress or well-being. But being remote, it may be harder to see. So using something like a wellbeing scoring can work quite well. So what would we normally do to combat stress? We would have some yoga at lunchtime, which, you know, I'm a big fan of yoga, but I just think on its own, it's not enough. We would normally go on holidays a few times a year. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's why I became a lawyer, so I could go on nice holidays. But of course, we can't even be thinking about that at the moment. Unhealthy eating habits, as I've mentioned, you know, comfort eating, or alternatively very healthy eating habits, so going the other way and perhaps not getting as much as you might need nutrition wise. Obviously, antidepressants are there as one solution, and alcohol has always been there as a solution. But I want to just share with you a couple of tips now at the end that we could use maybe instead of some of those traditional solutions. So how can we manage stress better? Now, before I give you my tip, because it is so simple and a lot of people would discount it, I want to share the science with you because that's how I got into it. So this diagram here, that yes, I did draw a few years ago, but I have had approved by a GP who came to one of my sessions. This shows you what happens to the brain in the normal stress reaction. So this is a bit what you'd call the fight or flight response. So if you think back to cave people times when we needed the fight or flight response, stress was very healthy and very good for us. So we would see the threat, the lion, the tiger, and our body would release adrenaline, and then it would release cortisol, the stress hormone. And what cortisol did, being very clever, is it increases our heart rate and increases our blood pressure, which means that blood would go to our extremities, we would run or we would fight. But it would take that blood away from the decision-making part of our brain, because we didn't need to make decisions, we needed to run or we needed to fight. And what also happens with cortisol is it actually increases the fear center and anxiety center in our brain called the amygdala, because the brain is growing and changing all the time. It's making new neural connections all the time. And when we're suffering from stress, this is what's happening. The fear and anxiety center part of our brain is growing. And unfortunately, the learning, memory, and stress control part of our brain is actually shrinking. And the hormone cortisol also impacts on our prefrontal cortex, which is that decision-making part of our brain. So it really was designed for fight or flight and not for thinking, acting rationally, even controlling our own stress levels. And it's also why learning and memory are impacted by stress as well. So the good news is that my tip I'm going to share with you now can actually reverse that reaction, because although we're not facing the same threats as our cave people ancestors were, we are under a lot of stress these days. I mean, we were even before this situation, as my stats at the beginning showed you. So, you know, the stress was things like, ironically, the connectivity, you know, the emails, always being connected to the internet, always being expected to be at work. You know, these were stress inducing situations, and now of course we're finding ourselves you know, in something even more so with lockdown. So my tip I'm going to share with you now actually reverses this. It actually increases the learning, memory, and stress control function. It returns more control to that decision making part of your brain, so you can think rationally and see a situation rationally instead of sort of panic mode, if you like. And it reduces that fear and anxiety center. So what is this fantastic tip? Well, it is meditation, and it sounds so simple, doesn't it? And yet it is so effective. Personally, changed my whole life 5 years ago when I decided to adopt meditation every day. And what I recommend to people is they do 10 minutes a day. You can work up to that if you're not familiar with it. And there's many ways you can do this, and I'm a fan of keeping it simple. So you can go onto YouTube and you can search guided meditation for, and you will get guided meditation for sleep, guided meditation for stress, guided meditation for insomnia, for success. I'm sure, no doubt, there's probably something about COVID and being in lockdown, but go and find one that you like. You know, you like the music, you like the voice, and listen to that for 10 minutes a day. The Headspace app is very popular, as is another one I've heard about called Calm. They're great apps, and I know a lot of people use them. I don't think they're necessary because, as I said, I'm a fan of keeping it simple. So the one I use the most, I do also use the YouTube guided meditations, but I also use this simple one thought for the day. So what I do is I sit down for my 10 minutes. I tend to do this first thing in the morning when I wake up. That's when I choose to do it. So I'll sit down, close my eyes. I will take 3 deep breaths in. So you breathe in, hold it for a couple of seconds, and breathe out. Do that 3 times, because that in itself resets the stress reaction. So if you do find you're in a bit of a high stress situation in the day, you know, maybe you've got a deal that needs to go through, or something high pressured, you know, you can use just the 3 breaths in. So just sit quietly, breath in, hold it for a few seconds, breathe out, do that 3 times, and that helps to reset the stress reaction. So that's how I start my meditation. And then I choose one thought. So it's how I want to feel that day. So I would use I am peaceful, I am calm, I am happy. You could use I am successful, I am focused, you know, whatever it is that you want to feel that day, that's your thought for the day. So I am, and that thought. So once you've done your 3 deep breaths, you just keep repeating that thought in your head over and over for 10 minutes. Now, of course, your mind is going to wander off to that email you need to send, the phone call you need to return, what you're going to have for dinner. But as soon as you realize that it's wandered off, just bring it back and come back to your thought. I am peaceful, I am calm, whatever it is. I'd recommend you stick to the same thought each day, so your brain doesn't have to think, what am I going to next? Just repeat the same one all for that day. And you can choose the next day a different one if you want to. So do that for 10 minutes. And it really does have a massive impact, not only on just stress, which we've looked at here, but it does help with, as I say, focus, concentration, decision making, thinking rationally, feeling calmer, you know, not shouting at the children every morning, which was one of the reasons I started doing it. You know, all these things, I can't express enough how it is really important to give it a go. So tip 2, how to become more present. I know it's a bit of a buzzword. What do we mean by that? You know, if you're with your children or your other half or your friend, whoever you're with, how can you be with them listening to what they're saying without that sort of inner chatter saying, well, actually, you should be returning that phone call, you should be checking your emails, you should have done this, you should have done that. How can we actually be present where we are? Which I would ordinarily say at this point is a fantastic tool for networking. But of course, we're not going out and doing that much networking at the moment. To be calmer and to see more of the positives, which I don't know about you, but I think we really need right now. So this is a tip called gratitude, having a practice of gratitude. You may have heard of this before. Now, again, I got into it because of the science. And the science is that it has been shown to have a physical effect on your heart. So there was a study of patients with heart disease, and half were sent away to come back in 6 weeks, and the other half were sent away, asked to keep a gratitude diary every night and to come back in 6 weeks. And those that kept a gratitude diary 6 weeks later were statistically less likely to go from heart disease to heart failure. So that there is a physical impact been shown on the heart in relation to practicing gratitude. So how do you do it? Again, about everything I teach, it's about keeping it super simple. So each evening before bed, think of 3 things you're grateful for that day. You can write them down in a journal if you want to. You can speak them out loud to your other half, your children, whoever's there, or you just think them to yourself. Or if you've got a friend or an accountability partner you want to have with this, you could text message them to each other. Now, what are those things? Now, I don't want you to use the big things. I don't want you to use, I'm grateful for the roof over my head. I'm grateful for the food in the cupboards. Although these days, you know, as we mentioned earlier, that's something that we are probably increasingly grateful for. But not the big things. I want you to go for the small things that happened that day. So maybe it's a conversation with a friend you haven't spoken to for ages. Maybe it's a deal that's completed that's been on your plate for a long time. Maybe it's a new piece of work coming. Whatever it is that you're grateful for specific to that day, that's what I want you to use. And my favorite question with this is when people say, well, what if it's a really bad day? What if I can't find anything? And I say, well, that's when this really works. That's when this is really, really powerful, when you really have to look. And it could be as simple as the cup of tea I had this morning, my comfortable bed, and the fact that it's bedtime. You know, it is, you really have to go to the minute details on those difficult days, but that's when this is really, really powerful. So I highly recommend it. It takes literally not even 2 minutes, and it's fantastic to share with children as well. Children respond really well to this. So I hope that that was useful. Please do let me know if you have any questions. You can contact me. I am on Facebook, Hannah Beko, B-E-K-O. You can also email me, Hannah, which is H-A-N-N-A-H, at authenticallyspeaking.co.uk, and I'm very happy to help with any questions. Commonly I speak to people about meditation because they say I've tried it before and it doesn't work for me, and we look at how people could change it around and how we can make it work for them. So do get in touch if I can be of any assistance. Thank you.